Wherever you like. Sure. Hi.
We will follow there.
Perfect. Yeah, up and to the right. Sure thing.
Can you sit anywhere?
You can sit wherever you like. Absolutely.
The railroads first came here in the 1850s, and primarily to move goods and people in and out of this area. Phillipsburg at one time was serviced by 5 different railroads: the Pennsylvania Railroad, the Central Railroad of New Jersey, the Lehigh Valley, the Delaware, Lackawanna, and Western, and the Lehigh and Hudson River. At one time there was talk of a state museum, transportation museum in Philipsburg. And the Friends organization was formed primarily to provide volunteer workers for the museum. And to that end, we then acquired the station to use as a headquarters. Of course, the station or the museum project fell through. And of course, we, to a great extent, became the museum. And we felt that restoring the station back to its original as-built condition would go a long way to give people a feel for what train travel was like in 1914, 1920s, that era. So we decided that the only way that you would ever understand the beauty or see the beauty and the uniqueness of the station was to go back to the original floor plan. We re-roofed it with a slate roof. We put the windows back in the original position. It's been a long time. As we get the money, we keep doing things. But that's the whole idea, is to make this station look like it did when it opened in 1914. The station was quite busy until probably the end of World War II. And at which point passenger service slacked off. In fact, the DL&W pretty much stopped service. But the Lehigh Valley used to have nightly train service to Toronto. Didn't stop at this station, but it passed through Phillipsburg on the Lehigh Valley, which is the lower bridge that's not being used. And that lasted until around 1960.
My grandfather's parents came to the United States through Ellis Island, and they resided in Jersey City. And that's where my grandfather was born in 1900. As a young boy, I guess he went to school, but he left school very young, about 14 years old, I believe, and he started to work with the railroad. His family moved out to Warren County probably when he was about 16 or 17, so maybe about 1916, 1917. Started working here at Philipsburg. Well, he switched the tracks so the trains would come in, and he would organize, I guess, which way the train had to go, and he kept inventory of the cars. So he would make sure there were X amount of cars coming in from Jersey City going to Port Jarvis, and he made sure they were, what direction they had to go, and kept them en route to the destination. And he had to use the teletype to communicate with the other stations also. He said he had to go down and start the fire to keep the station warm, because there's a coal furnace downstairs, and he fed that. It seemed to me like he did a lot of different things, although his main job that I understand was doing inventory of the cars. he did talk about the different cars. I remember he would name the different kinds of engines or the cars that they were pulling, and what went through that day. If it were, may have been passengers or I don't know what else it was, coal or industrial stuff, steel or things like that. It's kind of neat in our family because my mother's side of the family, my grandmother, his wife, our family, they were lock tenders on the Mars Canal, and he worked on the railroad. So I thought that was pretty interesting that they came together and their families all worked in, transportation.
So this building was built by the Central Railroad of New Jersey in 1921, and it operated as a signal tower, interlocking tower, for about 45 years. Sometime in the 60s, they were not using it for its intended purpose. It was kind of more of a dispatching center. Then in the 70s, it kind of changed over to more of like a maintenance of way headquarters. There really wasn't much dispatching going on toward the end of the Central Railroad of New Jersey in 1976. It was absorbed into Conrail. 1983, NJ Transit was formed, and so to this day, NJ Transit still owns this building. We negotiate a lease. We've negotiated a building lease with them, and they graciously allow us to operate our nonprofit and some of the town events with our, fortunately for us, our great relationship with the town allows us to participate in many of the events that they run just at Chappelle Park, which is a walking distance from the tower. So it's really it's turned into a nice community asset, of course, with the station across the street, surrounded by trains.
The building inside was all sandblasted or grit blasted. The woodwork was grit blasted. That was all cleaned up and pulled out, and then we started working on the windows.
Ron and Jean Titus, with their own bare hands, have really just kind of reassembled this building. Sure, using help with donations and people that have reached out. Pretty much everything you see from the woodwork to the copper piping to the floor was done by Ron and Jean. When people visit the tower, I'm really big on educating. We get a lot of visitors, from people who know trains to celebrities to family members to people who don't know trains at all. And when people come through that door, myself and my volunteers, we can typically kind of gauge someone based on a quick conversation of how much they know. So, what's fun is I can describe this building in simple terms. I can describe this building in complicated terms, and that's what's kind of fun about it. Our mission statement is to educate the public about railroading, how not just this building, but railroading in general, railroading in the town of Philipsburg and the surrounding areas, and how it impacted us today.
The Philipsburg Railroad Historians was formed in 1990, April of 1990, by a group of men who wanted to create a family-oriented theme park railroad set up here in Philipsburg. The fact that Philipsburg has always been a hub of railroad activity, it seemed fitting that for future generations we would record history, acquire equipment, and try to make the experience for young and old very, very worthwhile. At that point, we were able to acquire a lease for the property as a nonprofit organization, and began immediately by constructing track so that we could acquire equipment and place it on our tracks. This building is actually a former freight house shed, and we were able to acquire this building because we're on a piece of town property, and we spent some money making the building usable. We had to clean it out real good, and we put new walls, new ceilings in, new lighting. If you come into our museum, you'll find that our shelves are absolutely bulging with items that have been donated to us by well-meaning family members, whether it was a deceased uncle, grandfather, father that was in the railroad industry. That's how we were able to acquire all the things that we have here. We have a wealth of little items here that look out at you and tell their own little story. Our prime attraction is the Centerville and Southwestern Miniature Railroad. The railroad has its beginnings in 1939 on a dairy farm in Essex County, New Jersey, by Henry Becker and Sons, who had a dairy. He felt that if he built a railroad in on his estate, he could attract way more people, and it happened. He attracted thousands of people every year until he finally decided to retire in 1972, when the railroad was finally shut down. The railroad sat in limbo in a horse barn down in Monmouth County, New Jersey, until my founder was able to negotiate with the town of Philipsburg to acquire the entire railroad, lock, stock, and barrel, which we have today, although only part of it is in operation. We are located alongside Norfolk Southern's busy main line. Norfolk Southern runs about 20 to 25 trains a day through here, day and night. We believe that we are probably the only railroad museum in the United States that actually has an operating busy railroad right alongside ours. There are many days when people are riding our small train and find that we're pacing alongside a real train right within a couple 40 or so feet of us,